Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Happy Friday, happy almost weekend, especially to everyone on the East Coast and later time zones. We are from MDEF, and our presentation is about trends and needs of unaccompanied children aging out of ORR custody. My name is Cynthia Felix, and I'm a directing attorney with Immigrant Defenders Law Center. I oversee the provision of legal services for unaccompanied children in short-term ORR facilities. And I've been with MDEF since October of 2017, which I just have to share that it was very different times when I started practicing back then. It was a different administration. And so any minors that were aging out of custody or our custody back then were automatically being transferred to adult ICE detention facilities. So I've definitely seen how things have transformed over the years.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carson Scott. I'm a staff attorney with the litigation and advocacy team at MDEF. I specialize in issues affecting our unaccompanied children and work very collaboratively with our direct representation attorneys and our case management team to issue spot challenges our unaccompanied child clients face and strategize on litigation and advocacy campaigns to help advocate for our clients.
Hi, y'all. This is Zaira Murillo, and I am based in Riverside, California, but I started with the Children's Representative Program, and little by little, I got plugged into supporting our age out youth, and including that, I have also worked in other programs such as our Adult Representative Program, and so yeah, welcome.
Here's our agenda for today, the next hour. And basically our presentation is just an overview of our experience with minors aging out of ORR custody, as I mentioned. But we are also very much interested in hearing from all of you as to what your experience is like and how you are approaching stakeholder relations and networking with community members and resources from the state or the county. That way we can hopefully integrate those into our jurisdiction as we experience these challenges over here. We just want to start with some icebreaker questions. If you all can add your answers into the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. That way we can just gauge what you all are seeing. And then we will share what MDEF is seeing in our areas. And I'll just give everyone a few moments so that we can get some answers and go share them. Some other questions that we posed are, how many UAOs do you get each month? I don't know if everyone uses that term, UAO, but that is our way to refer to the unaccompanied urgent age outs, sorry. And then how much post-18 planning support do case managers provide from the facilities that you service? What is your experience like communicating with FOJC? Who provides transportation once a minor is released on their own recognizance? And what do your connections look like in terms of providing support to UAOs? Jacob, I see that you said you often speak with FOJC, and I'm eager to hear how you built that relationship because our FOJC kind of just ignores us. Carmen, same thing. We don't have much support with post-18 planning from case managers or from facilities that we service. 1 to 2 a month. Age outs, Gladys is saying, thank you. Emily just emailed with you the other day. You have 2 age outs on 6/17 at one shelter. Okay, so for reference, countries that MDEF has seen, where minors are coming from, we're seeing a lot of minors from Haiti and India, Russia, Guinea, Mauritania, Egypt, Afghanistan, Jordan, China, India, Colombia, Nicaragua, and Peru, which, just is aligned with the shift in migration patterns, because a couple of years ago, the majority of the minors we were seeing were coming from the Northern Triangle. In terms of how many urgent age outs we see each month, so we define an urgent age out as any minor who's within about 3 months of turning 18. And so it kind of puts them like in a tricky position because they're no longer eligible for foster care, kind of running on a tight timeline to get in that URM application and get an acceptance. But in the next 4 months, we have about, excuse the math, one of our shelters has 18 minors turning 18 in the next 4 months. And then another one of our shelters has 24 minors turning 18 the next 4 months. And then we see about 15 to 20 age outs collectively each month. As far as providing transportation, we seek out community support. We have a coalition of drivers basically that we call on last minute, and they'll pick up our minors from the facilities and drive them to the airport. As I mentioned, communicating with FOJC is a difficult task for us. And in terms of community connections, we'll save that for Saida's portion because she will highlight the efforts that we've made in that area. Wow, that's great, Jacob. He says that he randomly called FOGC and now they talk all the time.
Mm.
You can go to the next slide. So currently MDEF provides legal services to minors in 16 different short-term ORR facilities, and that includes both shelters and transitional foster care settings. All the facilities that we service are in Southern California, and 3 of the facilities that we service, we've serviced since MDEF's inception about 9 years ago. But in 2020, we saw a big expansion. And then in 2022, we saw another big expansion in Southern California. And so that has allowed other LSPs in the area to join our work. And that said, they are likewise facing some of the same issues that we are facing in providing services to age out minors. The majority of the age outs are in the shelter programs, not necessarily in the transitional foster care placements. And the work that we provide them requires lots of planning and coordination for our detained youth empowerment team, for the attorneys, and for case management. And then, as I mentioned, ORR staff and FOJC provide little to no support. So the first step that MDEF takes in meeting recent arrivals is flagging them for our attorneys. And so anyone that they flag will be any minor who is within about 3 to 4 months of turning 18. And we'll put like a super red flag on any minor if they are designated as Cat 4 and not having any sponsor prospects, not just for reunification purposes, but also for being released on their own recognizance. I would say in the second half of 2023 is when we really started to see an uptick in minors coming in who are just true Cat 4s, and they have no one that they can be sponsored by or reunify with once they're released on their own recognizance. Our team will also assess for immediate needs and referrals, including Vecina, the Young Center, and OTIP. And I know earlier another presentation touched on OTIP, but if anyone wasn't in that presentation, basically certain minors can be eligible for kind of a benefits letter from the Office of Trafficking in Person. And it's a really great avenue for getting placed in a URM program for receiving cash assistance and for accessing benefits under the TVAP and the preferred communities programs. And basically, those ones have access to housing support, case management services, mental health, medical health, and social service adjustments. Oh, yes, Jacob is saying that they sued ICE twice when the FOGCs detained age outs, right? And so actually in our written materials, we provided more background on what led us to this situation that we're now in, where minors are no longer being detained upon their 18th birthday. And instead, they are being released on their own recognizance. And so that's Garcia Ramirez versus ICE. There's also ORR Field Guidance number 9, which it relates to age outs and post-18 planning. And that was issued after the injunction from Garcia Ramirez. And then the next step that MDEF takes in terms of providing support to age outs is we try to offer them representation where we can. We are able to offer representation for minors who have been detained for 4 months or a total of 6 months, unable to be placed in LTFC, mostly because they have surpassed that 17.5 cutoff age at the request and recommendations of ORR, and also for minors who we are able to secure community housing for in our jurisdiction, then we can provide them continued representation. And the reason we try to offer representation while they're still detained is so that they can access our in-house case management services and get support from them.
Okay, so now, as Cynthia was sharing, we do have case management at MDEF, and I'll be diving a little bit about what that work looks like. So to begin, our case management team provides that legal support to our clients while their immigration cases are ongoing, and for our age outs, that's when representation is offered that we can continue that support. And we are a go-to resource for social services that empower our clients and thrive in their new communities. And our bigger vision of our work is that we believe in a collaborative process that is client-centered, goal-oriented, solution-based, and time-bound that allows our clients to learn and have that autonomy of their lives. And for our aging now minors, the first things that we identified when we started getting reached out for support through our detained youth empowerment program. Initially, it started with just transportation, whether that was assistance in booking a flight or looking for a volunteer that can take them to the airport. But then from there, little by little, it has increased, and we have identified areas where we can support. But besides transportation, we also have provided meals while they wait for their travels. We also communicate with sponsors, with or attorneys, and ORR shelters in regards to transportation arrangements that we're working towards. And a newer one, as Cynthia was sharing, is not newer, but like a trend where our focus is going is in housing. So securing a placement for age outs who don't have a viable sponsor and will be staying in our area, that or support has expanded into looking for shelters or community sponsors who can make that commitment of providing housing for short-term or long-term, and it all varies on their capacity as well. And as I shared, capacity, so as we are working with their this population and also assessing like what the practices that work and need improvement, we also are always seeking to build a capacity internally, and that is like, you know, by sharing our limitations to the work, and also what the resources that we are looking for is what's available in the community. So sharing that with their team, with attorneys, with or caseworkers. So we have created housing assistance, travel assistance guidelines that explains for new attorneys thinking of the shifts in staffing, what that work looks like, and how we can support as a case management team. We also have created a series of infographics that are for our attorneys and also for the aging out youth. Some of them are here, such as the HL's reunification plan that explains what that plan can be, and also it specifies our limitations because we're working with what we have and the resources available in the communities where clients are at, or age outs are. Released after 18th birthday. This is a one-pager that explains, so upon release, what are the minors or youth responsibilities, such as like finding an attorney, notifying of address changes. And the newer addition is the 5 safety tips when traveling. Many of them are either traveling for the very first time by airplane or in the United States. So these tips. We hope that they use them when, you know, in the moment of like, you know, needing help. And the back of the tips, it's like just a simple note that, you know, my name is, I speak, and I need help reaching the staff that can help me get to my gate or whatever the emergency may be. And as their vision or like goal is to always build collaboration, not only with their MDEF attorneys, because we're always in communication with working on a release plan, but also for them to partake in the support that we're working for that release plan. We also are always looking for volunteers, like Cynthia was sharing, that we do reach out to community members to help us with transportation, also for housing. We also are expanding our little by little, because as housing is an issue not just for our age outs, but for folks in California and across the nation. But building those relationships of like having meeting with shelters, whether that is virtual or in person, by doing tours. Also partaking in networks or task force that are doing the same work that we're doing in our region, and building fostering a better relationship with ORR shelter case managers, because as Cynthia shared, and we also experienced it, we are the ones, as although we're not in the facilities where our age outs are, we're asked to support in finding permanent housing. So like we're trying to work and building that better collaboration and communication for them to also start doing the work that is required for our age outs to have some a plan after the release. And this is we do provide that ongoing case management for those minors or youth staying in our region. And this have been some of the trends or what we have seen this year so far. And that has consisted of school enrollment for those interested in ESL classes, GAD classes, or pursuing a higher education by supporting them in enrolling in their local community colleges. Assistance, we do provide that ongoing assistance with medical enrollment. That's the Medicaid version in California. Opening a bank account, applying for an ITIN number, and while housing is a need, also connecting them to food banks where they can get food. And lastly, we do provide in-kind donations, whatever we have in-house at our offices, such as gift cards, clothing, or baby items for young parents. As soon as we get a new donation, we do make those connections for them to be able to get some of those items that we have available for them. And that's it.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about YACMP and then also just some case examples and ways in which the CMA team has been able to really support our age out clients. So YACMP, some of you may be familiar with it. It's not yet something that is present in all states, but what it is it stands for the Young Adult Case Management Program. And it's an alternative to detention program that's overseen by ICE, but it's locally managed by the contractor Acuity International. And what this program does is it purports to offer legal and social services referrals for the target population. And what we've experienced here in LA is that a lot of our age outs are being enrolled in YACMP. The field offices cover about a 50-mile radius. So any clients who age out within that radius are often enrolled into this ADT program. So the target population for YACMP are any youth that are ages between 18 and 19. And these youth have likely aged out of ORR custody. Perhaps they were released directly from CBP custody at the age of 18 or 19, or they found themselves on ICE's non-detained docket at some point. But in our experience, the kids have to be in removal proceedings to be eligible for YACMP. And here's a list of some of the participating cities at the moment. So some of you not practicing in these cities may not have heard of this program or seen it in action yet. And those of you who are in the pilot cities may have started to see some enrollments coming in for your age outs. So one concern we have here at MDEF with our YACMP enrollees is that there's a lot of information sharing happening with ICE. During the YACMP check-ins, there's a lot of invasive questions that go to the youth's potential relief. And we've also started to see in LA that with our age outs, they're not only being enrolled in YACMP, but they're also being required to participate in ICE check-ins. So it's really onerous on our clients to have these repeated in-person check-ins with ICE post-release. So I also want to cover a little bit about if you have not had experience with YACMP, what you should expect from a YACMP check-in with your client. So if you have a client enrolled, we do highly recommend that you take your client to the meeting, to the initial check-in and attend with them. So what you can expect is upon starting the meeting, there'll be like an introductory period where the YACMP officer will go over some biographical information, ask the kid's name, date of birth, country of origin. And this is a great time for you as the attorney to provide a G28 to the Acuity officer if there's not one on file for you already. And the case manager will give a little explanation about what YACMP does and the referrals and services that they purport to provide for your client. After that, you'll go through, the client will have their photo taken, and typically that photo will be turned into an ID card that'll later be given to the client. And in our experience, the officer doesn't always explain that this ID card is not a valid form of identification and really is of no use to the client. And so you want to make sure that the acuity officer explains that to the client, and the client understands that they're not providing them with any sort of formal, like legal identification that they can use. From there, they may also offer to assist your client with obtaining a passport. And, you know, depending on your client, that's an opportunity for you to intervene and decline assistance with that. So after they've done kind of this procedural stuff of taking photos and giving an ID card, the officer will then go into asking your client a long list of questions that really are aimed, I think, to get at trafficking, but can really get at forms of relief or could negatively impact your client in removal proceedings. So, you know, there's questions ranging from what the client's experience was traveling and why they traveled to the United States, any contact with drugs, any gang involvement. And this is also a great opportunity for you as the lawyer to intervene and object and advise your client not to answer these questions. So this is what our attorneys have done in our experience. You know, there's no real pushback from the acuity officers in objecting. Perhaps you may experience some pushback, but we do highly recommend that, you know, advise your client not to answer any questions that could prejudice their case or go to potential relief. And then the last step of the meeting is typically just a conclusion where the officer will set a next scheduled meeting for your client to come in, and they will claim that they're going to prepare some sort of service plan and provide some referrals for your client. So in our experience, a lot of times they never really deliver, or they just kind of provide some sort of list of services that we're already providing for them, like representation before EOIR, or, you know, services that our CMAs have been so wonderful to connect our clients with. So, you know, that's just kind of a rundown of what to expect at YACMP. And I did see somebody in the comments say, you know, it's really in their experience, it's not providing any real services, but it's more of a monitoring system. And that's exactly been IMDEF's experience too. And we also try to get our clients unenrolled as soon as possible. So some tips and tricks that have been useful for us, as soon as the enrollment notice comes in, typically our attorneys are the ones who call to schedule the first meeting. And at that point, it'll be the first opportunity to ask that your client be unenrolled. So it's the first point of advocacy where you can say, this client is represented by our firm, by our legal services. You know, there's no need for this program for them. Can you please unenroll? And that might be unsuccessful, and you may still need to schedule an appointment. It is, you know, the acuity officer will advise your client that participation in YACMP is mandatory. So if calling and getting them unenrolled isn't successful, we recommend, again, going to the ICE check-in, and it's another opportunity to intervene and ask that your client be unenrolled. You know, some things that you should lean on. YACMP is designed for youth that are deemed non-dangerous and a low flight risk by ICE. So lean on those designations and say this, you know, our client is a really low flight risk. They're represented by counsel. Here at our, you know, we're providing assistance, you know, with housing, with food, with participation in removal proceedings. This child does not benefit from YACMP and should be unenrolled. So really lean on the fact that you are representing the child and helping them access any services that YACMP purports to provide. Okay, and then I'll talk a little bit about some case examples. So in one case we had at IMDEF, we had a child who aged out of ORR custody with no sponsor, and they were released, they were ROR'd, but with ICE check-ins. So they were already going to ICE check-ins. They were unable to secure any housing prior to the age of 18. So our CMA team was there ready to help them find some housing on their 18th birthday. Within a few months of aging out, he was also enrolled in YACMP, and our attorney was successful in getting him unenrolled simply by persistently contacting YACMP. So she was calling regularly until this officer answered his phone, gave her a direct email contact for future clients to be enrolled. And he, it was really like her persistence in asking that the client be unenrolled and explaining that the client is represented by us. She was able to get him out of the program. Another case example, I had a client who was enrolled in YACMP and she changed addresses. And so I called to inquire about the enrollment. And when I notified them of her address, she was unenrolled because she was outside of the 50-mile radius. So also check to see where your client is located, because if they're outside of that 50-mile radius, it's one easy way to get them out of YACMP. So the last case example is not related to YACMP, but I do think it just highlights the extraordinary efforts of our CMA team and all the connections that they've been able to develop locally. I had a client who was in a secure facility, had some disabilities and that required consistent medication and support and therapies. He was ROR'd at the age of 18 with no housing. Our CMAs worked so hard to find him a facility that could take him in after 18 and was able to continue to provide the therapies and the access to medication that he needed. But unfortunately, I'm sure, as many of you know, sometimes difficult. A lot of shelters won't take our clients in until they're actually have become houseless. So when this child turned 18, our CMAs had set up several intakes for him around the city at different shelters, and were able to secure a wonderful volunteer who drove him all over greater Los Angeles with snacks and lunch to interview for different housing placements. And that same day, he was able to be admitted into one and had some secure housing. So, we're super grateful to the collaboration between our case management associates and our direct rep attorneys and the hard work that they've developed to create different connections throughout our community to provide the support for our kids who are just being released with no place to go on their 18th birthday. Jacob, YACMP is mandatory from what we understand. Initially, we were told it wasn't mandatory by the acuity officers, but since then, any directives we have gotten from YACMP officers is that participation is mandatory. And there could be, we've been told that our clients may face more stringent ATD enrollments if they fail to participate in YACMP. I think that it might be dependent on the officer you get or the area you get. I don't know if others want to chime into the chat with other experiences they've had with YACMP.
Yeah, on that note, if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask, we have questions of you all. What has your experience been like with YACMP? What is your local stakeholder relationship looking like in terms of finding transportation or housing for aging out minors? While Carson did highlight 2 cases that ended on a positive note, we also are experiencing a lot of cases that don't end so positively. I know for another LSP in the area, they worked so hard to try to get one of their clients housing, and they just were unable to, that they had to keep the minor in a hotel for a few weeks. The minor was released on their own recognizance to their office. And then when they brought it to FOJC's attention, FOJC acted like they had never heard of such a thing. And like everything is running smoothly with age outs. Pablo said some ORR facilities are happy to transport kiddos to bus stations, airports, etc. Others have the attitude that they won't help the kiddo the moment they turn 18. Right. That's been our experience also. Just depending on the facility, I think some facilities have program directors that are more inclined to provide that support. Meanwhile, others, we provide services to a facility that has on average like probably 7 to 8 age outs a month. And so I can see that they are like no to one, therefore no to all. But for other facilities who kind of have age outs every couple of months, then those are the ones that are more inclined to provide the transportation. Some program directors also are actually inclined to help collaborate on this issue on a bigger scale. And so we've been working with the Young Center and the other LSPs in the area to first get on the same page in terms of what our ask would be, and to see how they can pitch in, and then how we can put more pressure on FFS and ORR to also put pressure on the case managers. So yeah. Another issue that we're seeing is the long wait times for minors to be placed in LTFC, and then having minors age out. I think we're seeing that minors who are from non-Spanish speaking countries have the longer wait time because the resource parents for the programs aren't inclined to accept them because of their cultural different and linguistic differences. So one thought is to try to find resource parents who could sign up who are of more culturally diverse backgrounds. And then on that note, it just would be nice to have more community members from culturally diverse backgrounds for the age out minors. But that's been a struggle for us.
I'll jump in and mention there is one question in the Q&A, Cynthia. The handouts you all shared on slide 12 regarding building capacity, there's a request to share copies of those. We can touch base about that later, but just want to mention that. I don't know which slide that was, but that is a question in the Q&A box.
Okay. Yeah, the slides are really beautiful. Thank you to Saida. She has these magnificent Canvas skills, and she has built those from scratch. I just tell her what information we need to put in there, and we go back and forth on a couple of drafts, and then she makes them look really pretty and child-friendly and easy for them to take around with them once they're released from the shelters. So we can talk about sharing those with everyone. Yep. Thank you, everyone. We're happy to answer any questions. If you want to email us, feel free to reach out. If you want to collaborate on some ideas, also feel free to reach out. If you want to share your experiences, we are eager to hear them. Have a nice weekend.